What's up guys, it's Raul here. We are back with the second episode of Shotshape Breakdown series. I'm gonna be talking about the Hyzer Flip in this episode. Really, I'm just gonna be doing the same thing I did last time, breaking down what the shot is, talking about when or why it's useful in certain situations, and then just demonstrating what it looks like and what some of the different types of Hyzer flips would look like out here in the field. First off, a Hyzer flip can be done with any type of disc, whether that's mid, putter, fairway driver, or distance drivers. And what it is exactly is taking a neutral to understable disc, throwing it on various amounts of Hyzer depending on the disc. If it's more neutral, more closer to flat. If it's flippier, more Hyzer, and letting it flip up on Hyzer and turning over to the right. If you're a new or beginner disc golfer and you're not super familiar with the terms, a Hyzer just means releasing it on the angle that the disc wants to fade on. So if you're a backhand righty thrower, then releasing it on this angle because the disc fades left. And what's gonna happen is you're gonna release it on that Hyzer angle where it typically would wanna fade out with an overstable disc, or if you just don't throw it hard enough to actually get the flip. And what I mean by understable driver means it wants to do the opposite of fading out, which is its natural tendency. So you're taking a understable disc, which means it wants to flip over and do the opposite of fading out, its natural tendency. So you're putting it on one angle and it's gonna flip over and either fade back out or just hold over the whole time. And that's just, dependent on really what you want the shot to do and how hard you throw it or how soft you throw it or how much Hyzer you put it on. I think you should always have some sort of intention with what you want out of the flight, whether that's fading it out or turning it over. For example, if there's OB left and you just want to get a full flight but you don't want to fade out, I think it could be a good idea to throw a Hyzer flip where you release it on Hyzer and you know for a fact that it's going to turn over and never fade out. Then you could crank it on Hyzer and just trust it. So you could throw it hard, you could put, a significant amount of Hyzer and just know that it's going to turn over right the whole time. So that's what a Hyzer flip is like I said, throwing an understable disc on Hyzer, whether that's forehand or backhand, and letting it flip and turn over or flip and then fade out. Either way, it's throwing it on Hyzer, and that's why it's called the Hyzer flip, because it's flipping up and then from there it can either turn over or finish. So a couple instances where the Hyzer flip can be useful is one, throwing uphill shots, whether that's on a par 4 distance line or just reaching a basket that's uphill. I think throwing a Hyzer with a flippier disc, something that will flip up and either turn or just ride straight, is going to be beneficial because throwing on Hyzer lifts the disc. And I talked about it in the last video, the flex shot video, throwing on an Hyzer pushes the disc down and nose down. So throwing uphill, it's better to throw an understable disc on Hyzer to get it to go straight. There's kind of 2 or 3, various ways of getting a disc to go straight. You could throw a flex shot with the overstable disc, you could throw flat with a neutral disc, or you could throw a Hyzer with a understable disc, and they're all gonna kind of push straight and have a relatively similar path. But throwing uphill, my personal opinion, is throwing on Hyzer and letting the disc pop up to flat and ride straight is the best, because on Hyzer the disc naturally pops up. That's just better for throwing uphill because it's naturally going to ride up the hill, and throwing an understable disc is naturally going to get you more distance because it's going to want a full flight on that Hyzer. Another reason is if you're playing a long hole or a par 4 or par 5 and you have a wide open fairway with no OB, a good shot to throw in that case is the Hyzer flip. I talked about it in my flex shot video. The flex shot is really good for cranking over an overstable disc and knowing that it's gonna come back and land in the middle every time. If you don't necessarily need to land in the middle, an understable disc is naturally gonna have more of a flight because you're putting it on Hyzer, it's turning over and it's fading out. So that's 3 angles, and it just wants to stay in the air for a little bit longer. So if you need that little bit of extra distance or just want that extra distance on a par 4 or par 5, I think it is beneficial to throw the Hyzer flip because you get more ride and fade out of a disc, I think I also mentioned this in the first video, you're allowing the disc to do more things and you're giving the disc more options, because you could put it on too much hyzer, it could fade out, it could, you know, turn over too much because you're throwing an understable disc, but it has higher potential. So I would say it has a lower floor and a higher ceiling. So that's when it could be beneficial if you're like, you know what, I want to try for that extra distance and I'm not going to be punished too bad if I do throw a bad shot. And a third scenario where they're good is wood shots or tight corridors, areas that you have to land the disc flat, and if you fade too far left or turn it over too far right, then you're going to be in trouble. Going with the Hyzer Flip is good because you control the amount of hyzer you want to put on it based off the amount of understability in the disc. So if it's a very understable disc, then you put it on a lot of hyzer. But for this specific shot, I think a slightly understable disc is best, so that way you don't have to mess with a lot of hyzer and getting the perfect flip amount. I think a slightly less than neutral disc is perfect. Something like this Luna, like a Leopard 3 if you're going fairway driver, a Wraith for distance driver, something that you could put on a touch of angle and it's gonna flip up, maybe turn a little bit and fade out and land flat. If you put it on too much hyzer, it's still gonna push straight, maybe fade out a little. If you throw it too flat, it's gonna kind of slowly just burn over too much, but it's not gonna turn super hard. So something in the woods, in my opinion, is something that's slightly understable, and most of the time if you hit close to your release angle, which in my opinion is just a little bit of hyzer, you know, a little less than flat, and just allowing it to flip up and push straight and either fade a little left or turn a little right based off, you know, your nose angle, how far you or how hard you're throwing it, and how much angle, hyzer angle you're putting on it. So for the Hyzer Flip shot, it's really not a spike hyzer angle. You're not, you know, reaching down super low and throwing this crazy hyzer. Unless you have a really flippy disc, then you can, but it's more rare that you're gonna be doing that than just throwing more of a stock hyzer angle at a mid height. I will demonstrate some flippier discs on some steeper angles, but you're never gonna be like getting real down low into your reach back. That's gonna be another shot for the series later. That's more of a spike hyzer or a pushing hyzer, as I call it. But the Hyzer Flip, in my opinion, you kind of want to keep it mid height, get it pushing straight, and get a slow flip and turn, or a slow turn and a little bit of fade. So body positioning, I think you're still standing up relatively straight. You have your normal reach back, whether that's, you know, a little higher on your chest or a little lower, whatever your comfortable and natural reach back is for you. That's kind of gonna be your reach back. And then opposed to standing up perfectly straight, you're just leaning over a little bit. So, you know, a lot of the best teachers in disc golf, Drew Gibson, Scott Stokely, say you wanna have your natural reach back, so whatever is natural for you. And then for the Hyzer Flip, you just wanna tilt over a little bit. And whether that's a really flippy disc, you know, you could tilt over a little bit more, or if it's just a little flippy, then, you know, you could just tilt over a little bit and get that slight hyzer angle. So there's not really much to it, and you're really just pulling straight across while you're tilted over, and that should be your line and your hyzer line. And then from there, it's really just practicing the shot, figuring out, you know, the flip points of your disc, knowing what type of shot you want. If you want something to hold over a little bit more to the right, then you could take your flippy disc that, you know, you usually put on a lot of hyzer and just put it a little hyzer, and instead of fading out, it'll just hold over to the right most of the time. So I'll start demonstrating some shots, some different angles, some different shot styles, and just demonstrating what a Hyzer Flip looks like. So I've got a bunch of putters here. We've got two flippy ones, two like pretty neutral but on the flippier side ones, and then two neutral to stable ones. These last two that I showed you are both P1Xs. These ones are P1s, so these ones have a bead, so they're going to want to finish a little bit harder. The P1s are going to want to hold over a little bit. So I'll kind of show you the two different Hyzer shots or Hyzer Flip shots. There's kind of three, but I'll show you two different Hyzer Flip shots with each set of putters. One, I'll go on a steep angle and throw kind of like a Hyzer Flip up to push straight and fade out, and then one a little flatter, something that starts on hyzer and then pushes out to the left. These are good for players that don't have, you know, the best forehand or aren't as accurate with their sidearm. You know, you could get really accurate with the Hyzer Flip. That's what Isaac Robinson does, and he's spot on with, you know, all of his putter Hyzer Flip shots because he knows the flip points, he knows the angles, and putters pretty much do exactly what he wants every time. So first one here, I'll go a steep hyzer and just kind of try to flip it up and then let it fade out or push straight. These are pretty flippy, so it might flip up and even turn a little bit, but the second one I'll throw flatter and let it turn more. So just gonna, you know, kind of mid reach back, but tilt over a good amount and get that arm down and follow through up. Yeah, so I wouldn't even consider that a hyzer flip. That's more of a different shot, more of a pushing hyzer, I would call it, but I was exaggerating because I haven't thrown this particular putter in a while. So I put it on a lot of hyzer and it kind of just rode left, but it's so flippy that it was like almost trying to stand up, but just fighting left. So this one, I'll throw it like just a touch of hyzer and kind of demonstrate that flip up to turn. So I threw that one really low, but you saw the flip and push straight. We're gonna try to demonstrate those two shots a little bit better with these two, but that's kind of the difference between, you know, a lot of hyzer and something that's a little flatter that's gonna turn. I just threw that last one too low. But okay, so again, we'll do this one with kind of a pushing hyzer or a hyzer flip that flips up, you know, goes straight and then fades out, and then the other with the other one. We do have a little tailwind, so that's why they might be acting a little stable. So that was meant to be a hyzer that, you know, pushes straight and fades out, but I wanted to make sure that it flipped up, so I threw it extra hard, and it ended up coming out pretty flat. So, you know, it flipped up and turned over, which isn't bad for a hole that, you know, you might need to go right, but I'll try to make this one flip up and go straight since I did the turning one with that one. Yeah. So there we go. Even though it didn't flip all the way up to flat, it's a putter, so you could throw it on a pretty steep hyzer and it'll just flip up. And even though it still is on hyzer, it's not really cruising left. It's kind of just on hyzer, like slowly flipping up and pushing straight. So I would consider that a hyzer flip. That's kind of the shot that Isaac Robinson throws. He just throws a little more stable. So he does throw it a little flatter, so it doesn't look like it's on that much hyzer, but that really is what he's doing. He's taking a straight to understable disc, throwing it on a little hyzer, and as it's kind of fading out, it's also flipping up, so it's just going dead straight. So try to do it one more time. We'll start with the straight shot, and then the second one we'll throw a little flatter. I'm gonna throw these extra hard because they're stable, so I'm gonna put this on a good amount of hyzer and just try to throw it dead straight. So that is a perfect example of what a hyzer flip with a putter looks like. I threw it extra hard, so it really flew like what you would want out of a true throwing putter when you're throwing it hard. You know, that probably went 280, 290 or so on an absolute rope. So now I'll kind of act like the basket's off a little bit right and throw it just with a touch of hyzer and see if I could get it to drift. Yeah, so that came out a touch of hyzer to flat maybe. I might have, you know, kind of pulled it flat at the end, or it just might have been so close to flat that right out of the hand it turned. Either way, I'm pretty happy with that shot because it came out, you know, right on that flat to touch a hyzer line and just popped up and immediately rode right the whole time. And whether that's not, you know, your every day, every hole type of shot, it's a really useful shot to have, especially if you don't have a sidearm or if your sidearm is feeling tired. That forehand shot comes up all the time, and that little turnover with the putter could be super useful. All right, I know I've been talking a lot, so I'm just gonna start rapid firing. I'm gonna throw 4 fairway drivers now, Leopard 3, a Valkyrie, a straight Thunderbird, and then a flippy FD3. This Leopard 3 is pretty stable, but if you throw it hard, it will turn. So I'm just gonna throw it on kind of a mid hyzer line and try to get it to turn and then even fade out a little bit because it's stable. So not flat and not like a ton of hyzer, just kind of a mid hyzer line, like, you know, a decent amount, and then just let it turn and hopefully see if I could get it to fade back a little bit. So that was actually a really good line. It was a little bit lower than I wanted, so that's why it held over, but I think if I gave it a little bit more height, it would kind of have a slow turn and then a little fade. So I'm definitely not mad with that. If I threw it, it was on a good line and it was turning. If I was playing a par 3, it would still probably be some sort of putt. So now we'll go with this Valkyrie. This thing should be pretty flippy. It's flat. It's actually a 2004 Champ Valk. I think it's also like 167 or something. So this is like your very flippy disc for you. It's not the most common shot if you need something to turn over a lot or just want a late flip and you know, a little bit of extra distance or something, then you could do something like this. But typically it gets a little squirrely, so I wouldn't necessarily advise it on every hole, but it's still a good shot to have that late flip. So try to put it on a lot of hyzer, get the late flip, see if I could just get it to hold over. Heads up! All right, so the headwind picked up right when I was going to throw it, so I kind of knew that it was gonna burn over, but I put it on a lot of hyzer. It really just turned over. It's really just, you know, practice for a time that it's an uphill shot, I think, or something that you need a lot of turn, but it's a relatively rare shot, but it's still a good angle and line to have. I think having at least one pretty flippy disc in your bag is good because you never know when you're going to need a shot like that. I'll go a little bit straighter. So this is a FD3. It's flippy, but it's straight, so it should flip over to the right and then come back a little bit. I'm going to try to keep it on a pretty tight little line. Yeah, so there we go. That thing was trying to fade back a little bit at the end. For some reason, I'm throwing really low penetrating lines. It's not bad, it just is what it is right now. But that one flipped, turned right, and just went dead straight. That's good for like just keeping it in the fairway and kind of landing soft. That's like a good little tunnel shot if you're in the woods and just keeping something in the fairway. You don't have to throw it super hard. Just put it on hyzer, let the disc do the work. All right, guys, so unfortunately my camera got overheated, so the rest of my throws with the fairway drivers actually got cut out. So I'm just gonna kind of wrap things up here. Essentially, my point is that a hyzer flip is a really good shot to have. There's a lot of different shot shapes and a lot of different instances where a hyzer flip is gonna be really beneficial to you, but the main thing is just knowing your discs, having an intended line and shot that you want to throw, whether that's turning it over, holding it over, throwing straight, or throwing kind of a straight to hyzer that fades out, is going to help you when you're practicing, so that way you can really learn your discs and be confident in the shot and the angle to throw when you're playing that competitive tournament or, you know, just casual round. So that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.